One thing that I've learned over all these years is that when the only thing you're looking for is a good deal, the one thing you're not going to find is what you want. What does that mean, right? My name is Chatto, and I've been a real estate investor for over 25 years. And today I wanted to share with you one big shift in my business that helped me analyze more and more deals so that I can actually grow my portfolio exponentially. This became clear to me actually today. I was having a quick chat with Chatto, right? I was talking to one of my buddies, and he was telling me exactly what he was looking for. I have this rental property. I went out. This is what I was looking for. I found it, and now I want to find more. He knew exactly what he was looking for, so I guarantee you that he's going to go out and he's going to find them because he knows what he wants. And I today wanted to discuss with you on our episode of Chat with Chatto, how do you go about determining your buy box? How do you go about determining what it is you're looking for? Because if not, you're going to end up with a deal that's not really what you want. Because there's deals all over the place. If you need to evaluate every single deal that comes across your desk, you're going to be wasting a lot of time if you don't have this buy box put together. So that being said, there are five major things that you need to consider when putting your buy box together, right, and to find the exact deal that you're looking for. So the first big thing to consider when putting your buy box together is location. This is for multiple reasons, and one of which you can see from a previous video how I bought a property that was a good deal, but it wasn't in a location that I was looking to buy property because I was just looking for a deal. And I end up buying this property, and I didn't end up making any money. Luckily, I didn't lose money, but it was a huge nightmare of time, effort, and energy because I bought a property in a location that I shouldn't have bought a property in. So location is the first thing. If you know your location, early on, one of the things in my buy box was I am not going to buy properties in Philadelphia, period. And I don't have any properties in Philadelphia, period. But it's great because now every time I get a deal comes across my desk and I see Philadelphia, I can just hit delete. I don't care. I'm not buying there. I don't care how much of a good deal it is. So this was one of the things that allows me to analyze more and more and more deals, right? Because I knew exactly what I was looking for. The second big thing is price range. You need to be able to pull the trigger when you find a deal. It might be great for you to go out and find a property for $1 million. That's exactly what you're looking for. And they're not going to give it to you, and they're not going to allow you to buy it up and lock it up if you don't have the ability to buy it. So the second big thing is figuring out what your price range is. Whether or not it's the cash you have on hand, whether or not it's how much private money you're able to raise quickly, whether or not it's you're approved for this much of a loan, you need to know what your price range is. So that's another huge thing. It's going to keep you from looking at deals that are either too expensive, right? Meaning that you're not quite at the level yet where you can go out and purchase $1 million property, or it's going to keep you from looking at properties that are too inexpensive. Sometimes when they are too inexpensive, that could be the sign that it's potentially in the wrong area, potentially needs more work than you're willing to do. And that might not be an issue for you, but you need to know the top end of your price range for purchase and renovation. So that's the second big thing. The third thing, right, because we're talking about properties as far as owning them long-term as landlords, does it cash flow, and how much cash flow do you want? Cash flow is huge, and it can be one of those things where if you go and you overcalculate it, you put in so many different variables and so many different property potential expenses, you can get so granular with it, and you will get to the point where you can not get any property in the world to ever cash flow because you're putting aside money for CapEx, and you're putting up aside money for this big number for repairs and maintenance, and you're putting aside money for this and putting aside money for that. And by the time you get to the end of the rope, there's no cash flow left, no matter how good of a deal you find. So you got to figure out this is number three, but subset A of number three is how much cash flow do you want, and B is how do you determine that cash flow? What's the formula that you use to make you feel comfortable that you're going to cash flow on this property? And I'm actually going to go over what my buy box is after this, so you can kind of have an idea of where we're going with it. The fourth thing is renovations. How much of a budget do you have for renovations? You may be in a position where you don't have the time, effort, energy, or bandwidth to spend $100,000 on a rehab. So even though the property is going to make sense as a deal for somebody, if you don't have the crew, you don't have the wherewithal to do a $100,000 rehab, it's probably not something you want to look at. That's not in your buy box, right? You may want to say, you know what, I need something that's maybe a light cosmetic rehab up to 25, 30 grand. That's all I'm willing to do. So now that's what you're looking for. So that's another huge piece of your buy box, is how much renovation does it need, and how much renovation are you willing to do. And then lastly, number 5, your 5 big thing to look at when you're fifth big piece of your buy box that you want to consider is occupancy. There are some landlords who do not want to buy a property with a tenant in place. And right, it's much preferred, especially because when you're buying a property, especially depending on your local area, you may also be buying a long-term tenant who you're going to be married to for a long time. So a lot of people in their buy box, like, I am not buying properties with tenants in place. It needs to be vacant. I need to pick out this person that I'm going to have a relationship with, a landlord-tenant relationship with long-term. I need to choose them. I need to vet them out. I'm not buying somebody else's problem. Other people are like, you know what? I could get a great deal on this property because it's got a bad tenant, and I'm more than happy to deal with that tenant. And either way, it's okay, but what are you looking for, right? Because now if you're looking for properties that are only vacant and they have tenants in place, you could just skip right over those deals. You don't need to look at them. You don't need to analyze them because they're not what you're looking for. When you know what you're looking for, it's easy to go through a lot of deals because they very quickly, oh, this one's in Philly, I'm not buying it. This one's on this street, I'm not buying it. This one doesn't cash flow enough, I'm not buying it. This one has a tenant, I'm not buying it. This one requires a huge $100,000 rehab, I'm not buying it. And the more no's you get through, right, when you see the deal, when you know the buy box and you see the deal, you're able to purchase that deal like that. You're ready to go because you know what you're looking for. So now you're not just buying a deal, you're buying what you're looking for, which is kind of what I was getting at in the beginning, right? When the only thing you're looking for is a great deal, you're not going to find what you want. So, and as I said, as a bonus, right, I'm going to kind of give you an example of like, okay, cool. Well, what's your buying criteria, Chatto? What are you looking for? So for me, it's a couple things. Location, right? It needs to be in one of the towns that I'm currently invested in. The reason that that's the only location I'm looking for, why am I unwilling to look outside of that area, is there's an economy of scale for me, right, to have all my properties in one area. I can have the same contractors. I know the local rules. I know the inspectors. I know, like, everything is right there, and I know the rules. I know what I'm getting into, and I don't have to have a property now. If I add one that is an outlier, right, that's a new township I need to learn to deal with. It's a new rules that I need to figure out. And to me, it's not where I am right now. I want properties in this location because I already have properties there. Unless there's so the location is huge. That's what I look at as far as location. The second thing is price range. My price range has opened up a lot. I've learned to find people that have money. I've learned to raise private money. And I'm not as concerned with price range as far as, to a point, especially for single family houses. I'm cool there. But for me, like in the beginning, like, okay, cool. I know that I can raise 60, 65, 70,000, 80,000 with private money easily. That was kind of where my price range was. That's opened up a lot because now I can look at bigger deals because I've been doing it for a while and I'm learning what I'm up to. The third thing was cash flow. And the way we figured out cash flow to determine if we're going to look at it is the property needed to make sense. And we didn't want to overthink all the stuff that needed to get done to the property and all the potential expenses that could be associated with the property. We didn't want to overthink it. So the way I look at it is like, okay, cool. This is what it's going to rent for. That's my yearly rent. So if the rent's for $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. Now I say, okay, that's what it's rented for. What are the taxes? what's the insurance, right? And I subtract those two numbers out. If it's a single family house, the tenant's paying the insurance. If I just bought it and renovated, it probably doesn't need too much work. I am self-managing. Okay, cool. So for me, it was really the top line rental income minus the taxes, minus the insurance, right? Then minus the purchase and rehab, the all-in number, right? So if I was going to buy a house for 50,000, put 50,000 into it, right? So I'm all into a property for $100,000, right? That would be at if I borrowed that money at 10%, I'm going to be paying $10,000 a year. So I need to cash flow. So when I'm looking at my $1,200 a month, $1,000 a month is $12,000 a year, minus my taxes of, let's say, $2,000 is $10,000, minus insurance is another $1,000, gets me down to $9,000, and I'm $100,000 into the property. That's going to cost me $10,000 a year. I'm losing money, right? So that's not a deal. I need to cash flow $300 minimum per unit when, taking into account those items, taking into account rent minus taxes minus insurance minus 10% of the purchase and renovation budget. And mind you, as you get more and more properties, you may need, okay, I'm starting out, I need more cash flow, right? These deals need to make better sense because I don't have quite as much reserves. I need to generate more income, right? You may need to be in a position in the beginning where you're not generating as much. And then as you go on, you may be willing to take on a little bit less because you're able to buy more properties. Because here's the deal. When you refinance that property, you're no longer paying maybe 10% to a private money lender or maybe 15% to a hard money lender, but you're paying at this point, 7 or 8%, right? So there's going to be an increase in cash flow right there. And now if you are using hard money, you probably don't want to use 10% as the number. You probably want to use 15%, whatever your hard money rates are. But that being said, I need to confirm that I want to cash flow, and I need to do that at 10% interest because that's what we've been paying for private money usually. So that's kind of how we figure out cash flow. And then you refinance, your cash flow goes up, rents go up, your cash flow goes up, appreciation happens, right? That doesn't give you more cash flow, but it helps you refinance and get better terms, and it also helps you grow your wealth. And then the next big thing was renovations. How much renovation? We were doing a lot of properties, and we have a team. Because I'm only buying in one area, I have a local team, I have local contractors. We're not really that worried about a renovation. So for us, there's no okay, well, it can only be a small amount of renovation. One of the more recent properties that we did, the renovation was $180,000 to turn this property from what was almost a shell into almost a brand new property. And it's performing very well. It was a really good property because we were able to, we didn't have that limitation on renovations. But if somebody was new and wasn't in it every day, that probably wouldn't have been a deal for them. They wouldn't have been able to execute that. And then the last thing is we always prefer properties that are vacant. Doesn't mean we're not going to look and see. So we weren't completely against having a tenant in place. But we had to make sure that when we went and looked at the property, that the tenant was in place, that they were paying their rent on time, that they were keeping up the property, that they were doing a good job. And it is what it is. Sometimes, especially with rentals, and especially if you're in a rental market where there's a lot of rentals, you're going to have to, if you're not looking for properties with if you're not allowing properties with tenants, it's really going to cut down on what's possible. But that's, again, a determination you need to make. We were buying properties with tenants in place, and we probably gave ourselves a little bit extra leeway, maybe as part of a renovation budget where, probably going to take $20,000 to fix this up at some point when it turns over and this person moves out. I mean, it's kind of okay the way it is, but if I got to get rid of them, it's probably going to cost me another $10,000 on top of it. So we would probably usually lower our offer price by about $10,000 if there was a tenant in place when we were purchasing it, just to take into consideration all the what ifs. when you're buying a property with a tenant in place. So that is some of the things that we looked at in our buy box. And now, actually, as I'm going through my buy box, there's actually 6 things, right? There's one that I missed, is not loan to value, right? It's purchase price and renovation versus the actual price of the property, right? What you're paying and what it's worth. Equity. How much equity do you want in the property? So what I mean by that's another one that I can't believe I forgot that up front. So equity is a huge one. So for example, right, when we purchase a property in our buy box, we want to create 25% equity. 25% equity. So what that means is if we purchase a property for $100,000 and we put $50,000 into fixing it up, we are now into the property for $150,000. That property at that point needs to be worth $200,000, right? So we have a $50,000 spread between what we have into it and what it's worth. We've created that 25% equity, and that equity is so important, right? If when you're buying property, it doesn't just need to cash flow, you need to have equity. So that's the other big piece that was part of our buy box and looking at is like, are we going to be able to create that equity so that we can refinance and get our money back out to our private lenders, right? Be all in for no money out of pocket and get that cash flow down. So that's the other big thing is equity. So hopefully this was of value. I've been blabbering on about 16 minutes, almost 17 minutes at this point about a buy box, but it's so important. It's so important to know exactly what you're looking for, because when you know what you're looking for, you're going to be able to rule out deals real quick. You're going to be able to go through more deals. You're going to know what you're looking for, and you're going to find it as opposed to just looking for a deal. Hopefully this was of value to you. Like, comment, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And as always, I appreciate your tuning into another episode of Chat with Chatto.